All right, and welcome back to another great episode of Screw the W2. And today I got a great guest, Julie Holly from Three Keys Investments. She actually started as a school teacher and now is a syndicator. So that's been kind of her, so far life journey, if you will. But I'll let her kind of explain a little bit more of that journey. Julie, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thank you. It's like fantastic to join you on your show. You've been on my show. We've had other conversations. So it's just super fun, especially on one of my favorite topics.
Exactly. So, but yeah, and I was I don't even remember which episode number. I think it was back in December 2021. I was on your podcast, the almost said the old one, the Conscious Investor it is called now. So she
Yeah.
went through a rebranding recently. So
Yeah, you got to keep it fresh for everybody.
exactly. So all right. Well, maybe Julie, first off, kind of maybe if you can give us just a high level background, kind of what you did before you became a syndicator and back to your old W2 job per se, what was like a normal day or average day for you?
Awesome. Yeah. So I was a school teacher. I
Okay.
taught first, second, and for a moment, for 1 year, did a second, third grade combination class.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, no, it was really, really fantastic. And I love education. I love the classroom. I love, and really it requires entrepreneurial skills and a lot of business admin type skills because you are managing at least minimum 20 students, people,
Yeah.
humans, and you have goals to reach. You've got your KPIs in place and you've got to navigate some of the challenges that happen in a day-to-day schedule. Oh no, there's an assembly. Oh no, there's a fire drill. Oh no, right. You have all these different things. So really like that could be the economy. So really, school teachers are really primed for making a transition into the entrepreneurial space.
Okay.
And I really felt like the moment for me, the big moment. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but I'm going to jump
Oh,
the
that's
gun maybe
fine.
and just say that moment that I was like, screw the W2 was my third year as a teacher. I was set for tenure. And I
Okay.
thought, this is great. I'm going to be tenured. I've got the golden ticket. I have a government job. I'm set. I'm going to have a great pension plan, all of this. Who cares that I'm not making millions as a teacher? I love what I do. And
Right.
I'll have a great retirement, yada, yada, yada. Then they started handing out pink slips.
Oh boy.
Now, I did not get one. And my
Okay.
friends who did get one, they were not laid off. But it was
Okay.
sobering enough for me to realize, like, whoa, there is no security here.
Hmm.
No, you thought working for the government was going to be all neat and tidy and safe and secure. No, it's not.
Right.
And then you look at that was in California. So you look at also how that retirement plan is actually managed. And they are literally, I don't know if it is 70 billion in the red right now.
Last
Is it
article I
more?
read, this was maybe last week, I think, because I assume you're talking about CalPERS, the pension fund
Yes.
for
Yep.
California. Yeah.
Well, it's
Year.
CalSTRS, but there's CalPERS and CalSTRS for depending on
Oh,
which
okay,
group you're in.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be separate. I know CalPERS,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say this was 10 years ago or so, or maybe right after the Great Recession, but they actually I want to say it was the New York Times or something had to like subpoena them or do a Freedom of Information Act or something to get them to open up the books. Like, hey, how is the status of the pension? What are the investments? How are you sitting, et cetera? And at that time, they were about 1 trillion underfunded from what they had promised to what they had. And last I read, now that's 1.5 trillion. And so we're kind of going in the wrong
Wow.
direction, at least according to my calculator.
Right, right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so they're even worse off than the teacher fund,
Yeah.
because
So
the teacher fund was in the billions, but they could be in the trillions now. And
okay.
really, the reality of that and the how cavalier the organizations are. Oh, it's so, I mean, I've read articles specifically for teachers like, oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. This is normal,
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, so we had two elements there, right? Okay, working for the government doesn't mean job security. I
Right.
can get laid off. And this retirement that I thought I was going to have that would be all cushy. Well, actually, that's a very false sense of security as well,
Mhm.
because I'm not in the driver's seat of how they are investing that.
Right.
And I don't agree with how they're investing it. And I don't
Mhm.
believe any investment should be in the red. Holy cow, right? Like this thing is just a bleeding artery and people are okay with it. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so
I
I've
remember
actually,
a book I read years ago by Robert Kiyosaki, or I co-wrote it, but Who Stole My Pension? There was some case study. Uh, I want to say it was a teachers union. I could be wrong, but like the person that was elected to be the, I don't know, board chairperson or whatever position for the pension did not know the difference between a bond and a stock. And I'm thinking, okay, if you're elected to this
how did the
position,
person even get this?
exactly, yeah. So, and then they talked about how Wall Street kind of hijacked it. So then they handed off everything to Wall Street, and then this firm took over and they charged all these fees, and they showed on paper, oh, yeah, we're making, whatever it was, 8% or whatever, number they put. Well, that was before all the fees and, commissions and everything. So then it was like 3% or some ridiculous thing. And yeah, I think, like you said, when you're not in the driver's seat and you're, I don't know, putting your faith in someone else to,
Mhm.
have your retirement in good hands, might be a little dicey.
Yeah, I think it's extremely dicey. And in most people who are in a W-2 setting have, all of their eggs in whatever 401k
Yep.
retirement centered, which you and I both know. And I'm sure most of everyone listening knows the 401k wasn't even designed to be a
Mm,
retirement plan. So
yeah.
it's interesting how misguided so many people are. But that was my aha moment. I'm like, oh, whoa,
Yep.
let's just pull the plug on this. And I, at 25 years old, like left, dropped my job teaching and went into real estate sales on the residential side and
Okay.
took a bet on myself. I'm like, you know
Okay.
what? If I can be laid off over here, I might as well just start doing my own thing.
Sure.
And that was I'd already had bought a house and house hacked and had a roommate helping pay rent and things like that. So I mean,
Oh,
like
okay.
I've had some other things going on in real estate because I was raised in residential real estate. So
Okay.
that was a natural segue for me. But it was like all of my family is in real estate and it seems to go well. I might as well go that direction.
Right. Interesting. So from what you just said there, we kind of had this aha moment of, okay, there's these pink slips going out, and I didn't think government employees even got pink slips. I thought this was, pink slips didn't exist. Did you just kind of like, all right, that's it, here's my 2 week notice, or did you have kind of a plan in place, or did you just jump in with both feet and say, oh, I'm going into real estate?
I had you have to have a sales license in
Okay.
California. I no longer live in California. I live in a very free state of Idaho, which is a very different climate, right?
Right.
Altogether. But I had to have a sales license in order to do that. And I just created my exit strategy. It was like,
Okay.
okay, you know what? This is what I need to do. So I took my classes to get my real estate license. I took the exam and I just didn't renew my contract. I'm like,
Oh, okay.
I'm just not coming back.
Okay. And then
So
guessing that expired like June or July or end of school
yeah,
year or something. Okay.
yep, exactly. And I
Gotcha.
will, admittedly, when you leave the education system, and I've done this, so I've actually gone back. This is an interesting thing about my story, is that I've actually gone in and out of the classroom and full-time real estate or education. I've stayed at home with my kids. I've really done a variety of things, including
Okay.
managed properties. But so I'm not totally against it. And that really comes from my own personal position is I want to be wherever God wants me to be. And I'm very much, I live life in a very breath oriented way, if you will. Like, okay, I can inhale and exhale. As long as I'm inhaling and exhaling, I want to be productive here on planet Earth as much as possible. And for me, that deep core belief of if I follow the path that God leads me on, it is quite spirited, quite adventurous, and it doesn't look like everybody else's path. And it's very interesting in that way. So not everybody is going to say, okay, I've been in education, I went into full-time real estate, totally rocked it. And the reason I went back to education was because I rocked it so much, I was losing myself. And I was young. There was no YouTube. There weren't podcasts. I did not have the support system around me that would allow me to grow into a highly successful person that I could look in the mirror and value. And I was starting to look in the mirror and saying, like, I don't like who this person is. Still moral, still ethical, still doing all that. I just was getting this edge to me that was not the softness of a teacher. And so I'm like, I don't recognize this person. And it really was a fear-based decision. Like, okay, I kind of check it off my list. Like, okay, well, I can make 6 figures. That was fun. And it's totally, okay, that's cool. I know what it's like to be able to not be on a teacher's income. And that's really cool. But then who am I? Mm-hmm. And that's ultimately the question that comes down to for me is like, well, who am I? And yeah, so kind of digressing a little bit, but I think it's an important question for anyone to ask is like, what is driving me? Why am I leaving? Because I love education. I love kids. I love supporting families. So that's a natural thing to do. But I love the time freedom and I love being able to invest in people, including my own family. And I'm an anomaly, maybe, quite frankly, John. Like I haven't ever left because of my family. My why has never been my family, because I think that's just like a basic moral, ethical choice is like, I will always prefer my family and contributing and creating the time and space for them. But I actually believe that for me, like everything that I do is very centered around what am I contributing to the world? What am I offering the world? And if I'm not tied to a W-2 job, if I'm not spending 1 million hours in a public school classroom, pouring out all of my energy, which is a very good, like that was great. And I know that I supported students and families. That's great. However, how many more people am I supporting now? So many more people. And now I'm doing top tier down. Now I'm focusing on adults. And if I can help support adults, that trickles down to the kids.
Sure. So with that, kind of going back with, back to forth with, education and, real estate agent and whatnot. When did you make the jump per se, or maybe how did you find out about, okay, I can sell real estate, I can, get my commissions, I can do that, but then getting into the, realm of, syndications, raising money for larger deals and such?
Yeah, that's a fantastic jump right there. So left education once we started our family, and we took a bet on ourselves. It's like, okay, well, we will figure this out. We had managed our finances in a responsible way. The real estate that we had invested in early on, and also that money that I'd stashed away when I was in residential sales. When I was like, oh, I'm just going to save all this. So, we were situated in a nice position. So now I was able to stay at home with our son. And that's what I chose to do. I stayed at home. And then I realized after our daughter was born, I'm like, gosh, this feels so vulnerable. I really don't like this one door, one unit, one door. Like, I know we have the reserves. I just feel vulnerable. I feel exposed. If something goes wrong, we have zero profit coming in. And so we made an exit plan. And then we were just sitting on that money. And like, we ended up selling. And I'm like, okay, what are we investing this in? So it wasn't again, we really didn't have much guidance. There's so many more resources available now today. It's so ridiculous, right? I mean, this is a really long time ago. And so all that to say, we had these resources that we were sitting on. And I asked my husband, I'm like, listen, at one point, I'm like, I can't stand having this just sitting in the bank. We need to be investing this. What are we going to do? And he's like, well, just figure it out, come up with some ideas. So podcasts were around at this time. I'm listening to Bigger Pockets and all of that. And that's when I discovered apartment syndication. And it was like, and this is where, when you're willing to lead a life that follows the unknown path and just trust that it will be woven together, I watched it happen. So my background in education and that heart of that educator mixed with a love of real estate, it comes together in apartment syndication. And so now as like, it made so much sense to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's not this exposure of a 1-to-1 ratio on my income and the doors that I have. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm actually running a business. That makes my heart feel so much more stable. Like, and it's a proven business because apartment complexes have been around. And if you're acquiring one, that building has probably been there for a long time, and maybe you can optimize it better. And right, there's so many strategies you can implement. And so I could see the full picture of things. Like, I wasn't going to feel the vulnerability, and we've got a business plan. And now my background in education allows me to educate investors on how to get started in investing. Right. And so all of this just comes full circle for me as I entered into real estate syndication.
Okay, sounds good. And then with maybe you can take us back. Did you with the syndications, did that start like last year, a few years ago, or did you have like a
Oh,
July
I entered in the
1st?
best time. I entered in at the best time. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. So we invested passively in 2019 because
Okay.
I concluded the role I want to play, because in apartment syndication, there are usually 4 different teammates that come together on the general partnership. And the role I wanted to play was, hey, I want to take care of investors. My heart and my passion is towards investors.
Okay.
Acquisitions is another role. Maybe you like talking with brokers and owners and things like that. But I like that, but that's not my bread and butter. And like, right, so
Gotcha.
we have these different roles. And I just thought the number one thing I care about is getting people invested so that they can grow their wealth. And giving them the confidence to take every single step. So that level of education and creating that. And so as I was doing that, I'm sorry, I just kind of had like one of the squirrel moments because I got myself off topic.
Oh no, I did the same thing. So
I'm like, I'm just throwing myself under the bus here. So in doing that, I forgot which direction we were going with as I got off my rabbit hole.
oh, just like how I know you said you started passively in 2019, but was there a date of, where 2020 you opened up your first, whatever, 506B to investors, or 506C, or whatever the case was?
Yeah. So began passive investing in 2019, and then in 2020 joined a mentorship program.
Okay.
And the reason I did that, there was a reason why I was saying all that. Thank you for helping me out.
Sure.
And listeners, what a great host. You need to put that in the comments wherever you're watching this, right? Or listening, and leave that as a review. Like, John, you're an awesome host.
Perfect.
The reason why I went about it in that way was, okay, I want to support passive investors.
Okay.
People love their jobs. I have tons of investors that love what they do, but they also want to be wise, stewards with their finances. And so I want to feel what it feels to invest passively. I want to make sure I have the education in place. I want to make sure I have the network. I want to make sure. So I've rolled over my 401k and used it as self-directed funds. Like, I wanted to really experience everything. So my first year in 2020 was all about, like, let me learn and let me have this experience. And then I was like, okay, now I can do deals.
Okay.
Like, a lot of people will do this in a different way. A lot of people jump in and just get going and do deals. That's fine. I just felt like, for me, part of that, I want to sleep really well at night, and I want to be confident that I am leading and guiding my investors in the best way possible. I just felt like I want to have I gave myself permission to have a longer runway. And it worked out really well. Okay. So now at this point, we're invested passively in Alabama. We're invested strategically in Atlanta, Georgia, invested in Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh, wow.
Those are, and then also doing a Class A ground up development in North Carolina. So that'll be just shy of 200 units when we're done with there. And Des Moines is 120 units. So, I mean, like, we have, it just wasn't that. A lot of people kind of feel like they have to just get going. And it's like, you can grow into it. You can grow into it and create just a really solid foundation.
Okay. So taking a little segue from the syndications you have done, Des Moines
Yeah.
or Alabama and such. Excuse me. Are these 506B, 506C, Reg
Both.
A, or both? Okay.
Yeah, right. So traditionally I do prefer to do 506B. And
Mhm.
so for those of you who are listening, if you're like, what the heck are you guys even saying? Don't
Yeah.
worry. Even my investors will say, I can't remember, when am I, Julie? Am I
Yeah.
sophisticated or am I accredited? Am
Yeah.
I a 506B or a 506C? So, right,
Hmm.
just think, anything that is a C, if it's an advertisement, if somebody is
Yeah.
advertising their deal out there on social media, and you can see it, that means it's automatically going to be a 506C
Hmm.
offering, which means accredited investors only. All right. And so just think net worth $1 million or more, excluding your primary residence,
Yeah.
or you are making six figures, you're making 300,000 or more for the last 2 years, and you're projected to do that if you are a married couple. Okay.
Hmm.
So those are your 506Bs or C's, sorry,
C's.
but
Yep.
everybody else, the rest of us, right? We're 506Bs.
Hmm.
And guess what? Guess who I want to support? I want to support the teachers. I want to support the strong middle class. That there could be another podcast that could be like the screwed middle class, right? Like you have screwed the
Yeah.
W2 as like the middle class just gets screwed every which
Uh-huh.
way. They're just in this, they have a comfortable lifestyle, they have some discretionary cash, they want to invest well, but they're not quite yet accredited.
Yeah.
And so that's typically who I like to bring in as my investors. But the deal is you can only have 35. Only
Okay.
35 of you are allowed in any syndication. 35, that's it. So, just kind of do the math on that. If you're raising, $14 million and you have
Hmm.
35 spots and the minimum's a $50,000 investment, not very many of you are getting in as
Right.
sophisticated investors. Um, so there's that. We do have like our project in North Carolina, which actually is still open to accredited investors. We just
Okay.
brought on an additional phase to it. And so we have space. Fantastic project. Oh my gosh. Great opportunity for accredited investors. But yeah, so that is the accredited that we are offering at this time.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, I was kind of chuckle with, the 506B versus the 506C. They have the SEC regulations, and not going down the rabbit hole of some of the exceptions they've allowed later. I just find it funny where, well, 506C, you have to be a accredited investor, million net worth, minus the value of your home, or $200,000 a year, single, 300,000, married. But it's just weird because I've come across on such extremes where one syndication or investment, I should say, minimum $1,000, but you had to be accredited. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not even accredited. I guess I can't do that. And then that same year, I found another one. They said, oh, no, you don't have to be accredited. Like, oh, sounds good. Well, what's the minimum investment? $200,000. I'm like, that's more than my entire retirement account. And that was even if it was just sitting in cash. So I don't know. I think a lot of people have this idea like, oh, well, it's a minimum $50,000. That has to be a 506C. The amount actually has nothing to do with it. It's just a matter of
Mhm.
the, mix of investors and what they make, what they are worth, et cetera. But
Yes.
I don't know, for whatever reason, the SEC, it's perfectly fine to, I don't know, take out a home equity line, throw it in cryptocurrency Luna, watch it crash to $0, and you're, upside down, and that's perfectly fine. But oh no, we're not going to allow you to invest money in a syndicator with a, real estate asset with a great team, et cetera, because you're not accredited. But I'll never probably understand the SEC guidelines.
It is frustrating. Having had some experiences of my own, I can kind of see why they would have that sometimes, because I'm like, I've tried. I'm like, let me try to seek to understand, because
Mhm.
part of it just feels like it's just keeping a whole group of people out of this opportunity. On the other hand, it's really important to take the time to educate yourself so that you
Right.
understand what you are investing in. And part of that regulation is there to say, okay, well, if you're accredited, more than likely, if you lose that money, it's not going to sink your ship.
Right.
More than likely. I don't agree with it. I am very much, I don't like government interference in
Me
most
neither.
anything. And I'm very into a very minimalistic governorship of the people. And so,
Mhm.
that's just a personal bias right there. However, as I try to understand, I'm like, that would be the best I've got for why they do that. And those
Right.
those regulations are going to change.
Hmm.
They're already talking about raising the minimum for your net worth up to 5 million. There's all sorts of chatter. And so,
Yeah.
the thing is that you don't want to sit on the sidelines. You want to get investing.
Hmm.
And the sooner you're investing, the sooner you're growing your net worth. And the
Exactly.
sooner these regulations aren't going to be anything that you're going to think about.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's just a lot more stable too. If you're getting cash flow distributions, equity multiples, whatever, versus just throwing it in the stock market. And I think at the time of this recording, we're down 22%, and the Nasdaq's down 30 or something, somewhere along those lines. So, but
Oh, so much fun.
yeah, exactly. So, as far as like the syndication route and, where you kind of like completely left, teaching, so to speak, did you have like a freedom day on your calendar or a countdown? Like, yep, this is the day that I'm leaving teaching forever or whatever the case may be.
I did. I honestly, I did. There was, I taught an entire year longer than I wanted to.
Okay.
Um, and I don't really know why that was. Looking back, I'm like, why did I stay that extra year? I think my husband was like, just do one more year or something. Maybe that's all it was. I'm not sure.
Sure.
And maybe the writing on the wall wasn't particularly clear, but yeah, definitely. And I really believe if you are, for those of you who are on the fence of leaving your W-2 and you're feeling that, if you are feeling that friction growing at your workplace, it's not because your job is horrible and everything is falling apart necessarily. It's because you are changing. And we
Mhm.
have to respond to the changes that we have within ourselves. And every time I have experienced that, where life seems to get challenging, the friction is revved up, and it's like, oh, this is now a grind, that's usually an indicator that it's time to transition and move.
Mm.
And life kind of just gets like that to help encourage you to move on. Okay. So
Right.
you don't have to like shoot poison darts, with your eyes, like little laser cat eyes at your colleagues and everything. You can just say, oh, this is that moment where I just need to like not make this fear-based decision. It's kind of like having a kid or getting married. Like nothing's ever going to be perfect. You're never going to be fully prepared. Just get going. Go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. I think that old, I call him a mentor, but he's had numerous seminars, podcast. I met him in person 4 years ago. Matt Terrio of Epic Real Estate. He always had it where, back to the W-2, like just imagine if you did not head to work until every single light was, okay, I'll just, this is live and unscripted, folks. So, but he always said, imagine if you're going to work and you waited until all the traffic lights are green, and that's when you decided to, put the, accelerator down, head to work. Well, obviously that's never going to happen. So you just got to take it one step at a time and go through this green light and wait till this red light turns green and so on and so forth. And that just always stuck with me because I think a lot of people are looking for the perfect time if they are stuck at their job, like, well, I will wait until whatever, I have $100,000 in the bank account or whatever the case may be. It's like, well, you might be waiting a long time.
And all of these are excuses.
Yeah.
Everything that we say is an excuse, and it really comes down to believing in ourselves, believing in our capacity to perform. So I am very much, anyone who is around me knows that I am going to encourage them to take the bet on themselves, because you are the number one person to take the risk on. You're not going to let yourself down. You're going to show up. You're going to give everything that is required of you and more. Is that
Sure.
like a lot of times when I, maybe feel like they're, overwhelmed with, some of the growth that takes place with having a business. It's like, well, you know what? Um, how would I be performing if I had a boss over me? And
Hmm.
so you learn to be boss of yourself and say, like, well, no, I don't want to go back to a W-2. Like, I'm at a point now where it's like, oh, if God asked me to go back to the classroom, like, I will go, because that's a
Right.
point of servanthood for me. But I'm like, I don't want to go back. I still wake up early and I still work tenaciously, but I love the flexibility. This afternoon,
Mhm.
I'm going to be shutting down my day early and taking my kids to meet up with their friends at a beach. Like,
Oh, fun.
how fun is that?
Yeah.
All because, well, I have control over my schedule. I know I'm
Mhm.
going to get the work done,
Yeah.
and I can put it on the calendar when it's going to get done. And this afternoon, we're going to be at the beach on a
It's done.
quiet Tuesday afternoon when nobody else is there.
That was good. With that said, I know we've kind of been jumping around a little bit, but maybe like two final questions. Is there anything you do miss, or maybe shall we say regret about leaving your W-2? Since that day occurred.
No, I miss students.
Okay.
I love working with the kids. They're
Mhm.
fantastic. And I had good, I should show you behind there. They actually made I mean, it's been years since I was teaching at the school, and my daughter was still going to school at this elementary school this year, and they made me this huge teacher appreciation thing. And
Oh,
like,
cool.
students of mine from years ago were like nominated me, like, oh, we want to make this, so it's really cool to be able to impact their lives and to connect with those kids and open their world. And honestly, it was a different kind of teacher because I'm an entrepreneur, and so
Yeah.
they got to do a lot of entrepreneurial things in the classroom while they're like learning. All the learning was really through an entrepreneurial lens.
No, that
So
makes sense. So,
I loved it.
what's been the best part of your journey, Julie, with the syndications, the networking, expanding your horizons, if you will?
The best part, there's so many best parts. I love all the people like you that have come into my life. It's so refreshing to be around so many, not to have an echo chamber, but to
Mhm.
have support of like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one that thinks like this. Because
Right.
when we're just going around our normal day to day in the community, we really are the anomaly. And the people, look how many people go to a job and work for someone else and trade time for money. And
Hmm.
that's not a criticism. It just is going to say, like, wow, there really aren't that many people that make this choice to bet on themselves and to pour into building something through their own measures.
Right.
So I love all the people, and it's been really fun watching myself change. If
Hmm.
I look back at who I was and who I am and what I'm growing into, it's absolutely exciting. It's like, wow, that's so cool. I'm not the same person I was. And look, now I can go and speak in front of like hundreds of people, and it's fun and energizing, and I can contribute into these lives. Like, think about this. I could teach students and definitely have an impact. And now I have a podcast, and every
Hmm.
time I release an episode, just like you, we know we are influencing hundreds, thousands of lives.
Yeah.
And then when you get to go speak on stage, you know that you are influencing hundreds of lives, and those
Hmm.
lives are going to influence more. So I just love the multiple effect of that.
Yeah. Well, and I can speak to it. My podcast I started, about 9 months ago. It's just interesting when you see the stats and like, okay, a lot of listeners in Marshall, Minnesota. Okay, big deal. That's my hometown. But then you start seeing these, towns you'd never heard of. And then there was downloads that were coming from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I'm like, okay, I don't know anyone in Saudi Arabia. How in the world they find my podcast?
Some military person is listening to your
Yeah,
podcast
I
live,
have no
right?
idea. Yeah, it just says where they downloaded. It doesn't say
It's so fun.
34-year-old male on base XYZ or anything like that. So,
Right.
but, well, maybe in closing, Julie, I kind of did maybe a hybrid, so to speak, of between a podcast and my YouTube show. But we've talked a little about syndications. You accept 506B investors. Whether you have a self-directed IRA, 401k, etc. On that aspect of it, if someone is interested in learning more about your syndications or possibly investing alongside you, what's the best way to reach out and get in contact with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is just to go to julieholly.com.
Okay.
HOLLY. You can go to Three Keys Investments, but there are a whole host of ways you can do misspellings on that. So
Oh,
if you just
sure.
go to julieholly.com, it'll take you to all things Julie Holly. So
Okay.
it'll take you to the investment company. It'll take you to the Conscious Investor podcast. It'll open your door to a book club that I've run for over 2 years.
Okay.
And I don't have it on my website, but I actually high performance coach and I help people making that transition who want to go from W2 into whatever, any type of life
Okay.
transition. So that's something that is only word of mouth. That is not something I go around advertising on my website because the bandwidth and the capacity that I have
Right.
for really serving people well is limited. So you
Yeah.
can always reach out if you're like, I'm ready, but I need support. I do that and I love it.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Well, yeah, julieholly.com, and they'll have that in the show notes and the notes below to follow as well. So, well, Julie, it's been a great catching up. I think we've been connected, via LinkedIn the last year and a half, and ironically, now we have the same podcast editor. So, thank you again for introducing me to Natalie. She's been a great help for my show.
Oh, she's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
So, all right. Well, I'll let you go and enjoy the beach. And thanks again for coming on the show, Julie.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you, John.
Thanks.